Today we're wrapping up the Atlantic Division season previews with our final team, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've been a really strong force to be reckoned with for the last number of years. How have they changed over this offseason, and can they once again contend for the Cup? We'll discuss that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're previewing the Tampa Bay Lightning's upcoming 2022-23 NHL season. In case you're new to this series, we're going division by division here. So this is the final team in the Atlantic Division. All other teams have already been posted and completed, so certainly check the channel if there's other teams you'd like to watch. And we are going to be moving on to another division starting in the next day or so. So first we're going to recap the 21-22 season, take a look at some recent playoff history, take a look at how this team has changed, some additions, subtractions, take a look at the prospect pool and their projected lineup going into the year, and see where we think they will fall compared to their rivals, and then kind of talk about how we think they're going to do. So first up, let's recap 21-22, where they were third place in the Atlantic Division with a record of 51-23-8 for 110 points. They scored 287 goals for 8th best in the league, while only allowing 233 against for 6th best. The power play was phenomenal again, 23.9% for 8th best, and the PK was 80.6% for 11th best. So overall, their 5-on-5 play was really, really good. Special teams were really good. They really could have been anywhere from second or third or first or second, in any other season, really. Like, this was a real tough Atlantic Division in 21-22. The difference between the top teams and the bottom teams was tremendous, like a much bigger gap than we've seen in the past. And I don't think we're going to see that moving forward. It's definitely going to be a smaller gap, as a lot of these teams below them have certainly shown great improvement. Of course, they're coached by John Cooper, who I believe right now is the longest reigning head coach, tenured head coach in the NHL. Been there since 2013. So obviously two-time Stanley Cup champion, multiple time. Other times that they've been to the conference final, for example. This team has had so much success. It's crazy. GM Julian Breezebaugh is now there 4 years. Of course, taken over from Steve Yzerman, who laid a lot of the foundational work for the team's success even after he left. For the playoffs last year, they came so close to getting a three-peat, lost in the Stanley Cup final to the Colorado Avalanche. They've been in the playoffs for 5 straight seasons. Before that, there was a bit of a blip where they kind of just had a lot of injuries and missed. Other than that, they've been a pretty consistent, competitive playoff team for several years, winning 2 Stanley Cups here along the way. So now let's take a look at how this team has changed over the course of the offseason. Of course, we know the salary cap has played a role in teams having to shed salary sometimes and find ways to change their roster. So who is no longer a Tampa Bay Lightning after last year? Well, the biggest omission to me is Ondrej Palat. Of course, a longtime winger who was able to get a more lucrative free agent contract from the Devils. Palat has been clutch, a big-time goal-scoring player in the right moments at key games, especially in the playoffs. He's a guy who's never been really looked at or recognized as a superstar regular season player. He's been a really good one, but not, that upper echelon of elite players. But it seems like in the playoffs, he always rises to the occasion. And when they need a big-time, game-tying or game-winning goal, I don't know how many times his name has been the one to get it done. So they're going to miss Palat. There's no doubt about that. Of course, they also traded Ryan McDonagh in a cost-cutting move as well. So McDonagh moves on to Nashville. Certainly, we knew that they were going to have to find a way to shed a little bit of money. I wasn't sure if McDonagh would be the guy to go. I know at the end of season, when we talked about their offseason plan, I did mention him as being a potential player, but the fact that he had trade protection and had to waive complicated things. But they talked to him, and he was willing to do that, but certainly not an easy conversation or easy decision on his part. And of course, Jan Ruda also departs via free agency, and of course Riley Nash, who's bounced around a lot and been there a few different times, departs as well after being picked up as a deadline acquisition. Now, who have they brought in to kind of replace some of these players? Of course, they brought back Vlad Nemestikov. Nemestikov was previously with the Lightning before. He's a versatile player who can play pretty much anywhere in your top 3 lines. Typically, he can play all 3 forward positions. He can play on the penalty kill. You can put him up there to play with some strong players. Like at one point before he was first time traded out of Tampa, he played a lot with Stamkos and Kucherov back, and he was really productive, and that kind of inflated his value in my opinion. But certainly a player that he can play that role. He can be more of a third line defensive guy, to kind of do a lot of little things. So to me, I think they should be able to fit him into a different spot there depending on where they see him. But versatile, which is good. Probably ending up on your third line, but we'll talk about that here momentarily. On the blue line, they brought in 3 different defensemen after losing McDonough and Ruda. They brought in Ian Cole via free agency. And of course, in that trade for McDonough, they got Philippe Myers. And they also brought in Hayden Fleury, who was let go by the Seattle Kraken. So certainly a variety of players there who can fill the gaps. But certainly none of those defensemen are as good as McDonough. So I think it's fair to say their defense core definitely going to be a little weaker than last year. I think that's fair to say for sure. Now, do they have any prospects, though, besides these guys that have been brought in by trade or free agency that could make this lineup and really have an impact? And I'm going to say probably not. A couple of guys to watch as potential players who might get some time would be newly drafted Isaac Howard. I don't know if there's any chance he sticks around the beginning of the season for a small sample. Maybe, maybe not. Gage Goncalves, Roman Schmidt. Maybe they get a little bit of call-up option, but to be honest, a lot of the players that have been in their system looking for opportunities that have been kind of up and down, a lot of those guys have been traded, in the recent deadline. Like, for example, they moved Matthew Joseph, they moved, Taylor Radish, Boris Kachuk, like all those guys that were traded out. Like a lot of those players were guys who were like your bottom 6 guys or guys that were kind of going up and down, and they're kind of not so deep in that regard either. So we'll see how they proceed here. Obviously, they do have a strong lineup on paper, but if they run into options like injuries, the options aren't great. So I don't think Tampa is as deep this year. The projected lineup looks to be as follows. You're probably going to have a top line of Point, Stamkos, Kucherov. Meaning, obviously, Stamkos can play center as well. They can do this in different ways, but I think that's probably the top line you're going to see, with your second line likely being Sorelli, Brandon Hagel, and Alex Killorn. But like I said, if they want to kind of level out the offense a little bit, they could certainly move players around for sure to kind of change things up a little bit. But those are likely going to be your top 6 forwards. Your third line likely going to be Nick Paul, Ross Colton, and Vladimir Nemestikov. Some of these players, like I said, are interchangeable. Maybe if Colton's playing better, he moves up top 6, Hagel moves down. Killorn can play second or third line. Like, there's some versatile guys there that can be interchangeable. Your fourth line is really the main line that's probably going to be more consistent, which will be Pierre Bellemare with Pat Maroon and Corey Perry. But like I said, if they run into injuries, there's not a lot of depth there, and that's something that they're going to want to work on. But when you don't have a lot of cap room, you can't keep guys at the NHL roster. You kind of need to have more kids, so to speak, and it's challenging. But your D-core is going to be Victor Hedman, likely playing with Sergachev. I think they're going to probably elevate Sergachev, I would think, after getting that massive extension. It's only fair he get top D pair minutes. So I wonder if they'll play him with Hedman. Of course, McDonough played there a lot, and of course he's not there now. So I wonder if Sergachev gets that role. They could go with a second pair of Chernak and Myers, for example. That might be a possibility. Maybe Chernak goes to the play with Hedman and they move Sergachev down. They might want to do things that way. I don't know, but there's certainly Sergachev will be the second defenseman with the most ice time for sure, with Chernak being third. Hedman, Sergachev, Chernak, by far your top 3. Then there's a bit of a drop-off where you get Myers, Cole, and Bogosian. And, of course, Hayden Fleury's in the mix there as well. Vasilevsky between the pipes, and Brian Elliott backing up for another year. So certainly, like I said, their blue line is not as strong as before. Losing McDonough and Ruda is pretty substantial. Guys like Bogosian, Fleury are going to expect to be a little bit more. Myers, Cole, there's some decent experience there. They should be able to get by okay. But at the same time, it's not as strong as before. The forward group is not too different. I mean, you take away Palat, you put in Nemestikov. So, on a regular season standpoint, they're not going to miss a beat too much, especially if they can get guys like Colton and Hagel stepping up a little bit more. They'll probably be similar offensively. You get Vasilevsky between the pipes. If he's his usual self, they'll be really strong there. But I do like the Nemestikov add. If they had to lose Palat, he's a good value player, like I said, who can move around a lot in this lineup, and it'd certainly be somebody who they can shuffle the lines and not have to worry about who's playing with who and responsibilities and all that. He's very versatile that way, but they are going to miss Palat 100%. A big game player who scored some big time goals for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Where do I see this team finishing? I think they'll definitely be in the top couple spots in the Atlantic Division. Wouldn't be surprised if they win the division. I do think it's going to come down to Tampa and Toronto. To be honest, I think of all the teams, and you've already seen the other previews, I think the Panthers might have weakened more than these two teams between Tampa and Toronto. I think Florida might be a little bit more of a step back where they were first in the division last year. So I think it's early, obviously, and teams, they haven't even stepped on the ice yet for an official game, but that's how things look. I know they made that big trade with Tkachuk and Uyghur and Huberdeau and all that, and I just honestly think that Florida might be weakened a little bit more. Tampa's weakened a little bit. Toronto, they could be. Their big question mark is goaltending, but I think Vasilevsky and the veterans that are in Tampa, just to me, give me that more stability. That's why I think Tampa, out of those three teams, are the most likely to finish in first. But injuries play a role. Other things play a role as well. But Tampa, if they run into injury problems, they don't have as much depth there for call-ups and things, and that does concern me, and it's hard to predict that kind of season. We've had years where Point and Stamkos and Killorn and Kucherov, they've all battled some pretty significant injuries over the last few years, so it's really difficult to say how things go health-wise this year. If they can stay healthy, they'll be in good shape. That's going to play a big role for them as well. But I do expect them to be in the mix for the division lead. I do expect them to be in the mix for the conference championship. And I do expect them to be one of the top teams contending for yet another Stanley Cup. They know how to win. They're proven. They're largely the same group with some minor tweaks. And I think they'll be right in the mix as per usual. So let me know what you think of the Lightning coming up this year. Do you expect them to be in contention as well? Let me know your thoughts on the team in the comments, and we'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.